Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar in an age of declining demographics, personification is king. We're going to give folks just another minute to join, so grab your afternoon coffee or settle in with your lunch, and we'll get started in just a moment. All right, looks like people are joining slowly. Hello again and welcome. My name is Lizzie Lithgow. I'm the Associate Vice President of Marketing here at Carnegie. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar in an age of declining demographics, Personification is King, with Carnegie's Tyler Borders and our special guest, Jason Black from Samford. Before we get started, we want to do a quick audio check to make sure you can hear me. If a few people could use the raise your hand feature to let me know that the audio is coming through, will be good. All right, thank you guys. If you do have any questions or need any technical help, you can reach out to me in the chat. I just want to cover a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Tyler, can you progress to the next slide, please?
Yep, you bet. Sorry, Lizzie.
Thank you. That's okay. So today's webinar is going to last about 45 minutes with an additional 10 to 15 minutes at the end for our Q&A. If you'd like to submit a question, please use the Zoom control panel, the panel's Q&A function or feature down below to submit your questions directly to the presenters. We'll answer as many of those questions at the end as time allows. We've also opened up the Zoom chat room, so feel free to share ideas, ask questions, and interact with attendees during the presentation. Just make sure that you have your share settings marked to all attendees and presenters so everyone can be included.
I already made that mistake, Lizzie.
Of course.
Of course.
Well, as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared along with the slide deck sometime next week. We'll give you early access to the recording. Just keep an eye on your email and we'll send you a note as soon as the content's available. And finally, if you could please help us out by filling out the quick post-webinar survey. Your comments and ratings are greatly appreciated and influence our topic selection for future webinars. We'll get a link to the survey at the end of the webinar, and you'll get a follow-up email encouraging you to submit that email or that survey shortly after we conclude today's session. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our presenters. Tyler, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Lizzie, and welcome everybody to this webinar. I got to say up front, I wish I could see all of you. I think I much prefer a stage where we can interact, but I will pretend that I can see you and I'll pretend that you are laughing with us and nodding your heads and whatever else. And as we go. So I'll start here. I am Tyler Borders. I'm Chief Strategy Officer here at Carnegie, and I am joined by a friend and special guest, Jason Black. Just a pleasure to be presenting with Jason on this subject matter specifically. Yes, our doppelgangers, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. Jason and I actually presented, I think 7 years ago at AMA, and we also used these photos. We fancy that we look like them maybe 10 years ago. Lizzie tells me actually that if I make the screen small and if you squint, I could maybe pass as Ryan Gosling, but I think she's just humoring me. I will point your attention to those 3 colored circles on the screen because they'll be pertinent for today. And that's actually my personality in archetype terms and Jason's as well. So a little teaser and a foreshadow for the content we'll be talking about and how this works, because it is very useful for how you should think about student segments and student groups and how to personalize messaging for them. And so you'll see under me that blue, yellow, and silver. That blue archetype is like achiever, assertive, right? Strong, strength, those kinds of ideas. Yellow in our world is like innovative, intellect, developing new things. And then silver in third place there for me is like rebellion, breaking the rules, doing things a little bit differently, Harley-Davidson type stuff. So in our diagnostic test, our psychometric test, which Jason has done and I have done, that is the outcome. That is who I am at my core as a personality. And that is also the kind of messaging, content, imagery that I respond best to. So as I'm digesting content, be it online or in print, whatever it is, if you can talk to me through that lens with that sort of tonality and that style, your odds of resonating with me are much higher. And Jason, I need to look over the maroon, the blue, and the pink. I'll let him talk about himself. But we will get into what that means and how this is actually very practical for your world in higher education. So I've been in higher ed for over 17 years as a founder and as an executive in branding and marketing and research, really in higher ed most of my career. I am supposedly the innovative and confident visionary. I promise I did not write that for myself. The software spit that out after the test, but that's what it says that I am. And then Jason made me add this bullet. We like to pick on each other. Cowboy boots and skinny suits. I am always in cowboy boots, but they're the zipper boot. They're not the real boot. And Jason likes to make fun of that. He's nodding his head. And Jason says I wear skinny suits. I think they're just regular suits. But he made me put that bullet, and then he's polos and pleated pants. Jason, I see you've dressed up today. You went with a tie. I thought I had dressed up. I'll kick it over to you, Jason. Introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation.
Thanks, Tyler. You guys know, if you've done the personas, that my traits don't lend themselves to talking about myself nearly as much as Tyler's does. So I have a little less to say about myself. I've been in enrollment management for about 22 years. I do still wear polos. Some of my pants still have pleats. I know that's a fashion faux pas these days, but I do enjoy the classic, the timeless, things of that nature. And I know I don't look like Russell Crowe, but you know, a guy can dream. So excited to be with you and kind of talk about the story and the origin of the topic today.
Thank you, Jason. Well, let's dive in. We'll do our best to get to questions as we go. I can't promise it. We will throughout. If not, we'll try to at the end. And if we can't get to them at all, I promise, reach out to me and we will answer every single question you might have, or we'll get you an answer. But this is just a really special moment for me, I guess. This presentation is one I gave in Disney World just in January, and I guess backed by some sort of demand. And Jason, we weren't on stage together in January, and it's a pleasure to have him now, because this content for me is, I guess, sort of a life's work, and has been, it has been probably 15 years in the making, and some of the stuff that at Carnegie we're the most proud of. I think it really sets us apart and has been a great tool and asset for higher ed for all of you. And so just a pleasure to talk about this, and especially to talk about it with Jason Black. And we will tell the story, but I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Jason, because without him in my orbit, in my world as the VP and Dean at Samford, honestly, a lot of today's presentation doesn't exist. Jason and I have innovated together and pioneered, and he's let us try things and explore things. And a lot of that mentality and that collaboration together has produced these results. And so, Jason, just to say up front, I know you don't like when I'm gushy and we rather pick on each other, but a pleasure to have you here talking about this.
Thanks, Tyler.
So I'll open things up, and Jason, I'll go back and forth a little bit, but the fabled demographic cliff, this demographic cliff, as I said, I've been in and around higher education for a long time, and I know all of you have, obviously. And we have been talking about this big, scary, ominous cliff, this demographic cliff, for a long time. I remember a decade ago, and there were whispers about it. Hey, it's coming in such and such a year, this cliff of enrollment drop off, and it's coming, right? And Jason and I would talk about it. All my clients, friends, colleagues, we talk about this cliff. It was a scary thing. What's it going to be like? Demographic cliff, over and over and over. And now it's kind of here. And not that you need another scary chart, but I did make you this. I actually made you this with my own hands. So it's fairly up to date within the quarter in terms of the numbers. I think you all know what this is, but we are set to see a significant decline in enrollment for four-year college-bound students starting next year. And that decline in college-bound students due to the 2008 Great Recession and lower birth rates which happens historically in times of economic distress, and it happened in 08. We are now set to see between 2025 and 2029, something like 600,000 almost fewer students that are college bound applying for colleges. And that is significant. And I get that. And the point of this conversation and this presentation is, what can we do about it? How should we think about it? What would I do if I was done with this job and I was a VP tomorrow on a campus? And I've said to folks, it would be this work within the first week, the first month. I would get right to this demographic and psychographic segmentation to know my audience. And so we want to spend the hour talking about this and making this not just conceptual for you, but practical for you. And I'll show you how to do that. And as will Jason. I also want to say right up front, you do not need Carnegie to affect these tools, these analytics, these solutions. You can do this truly in-house. You can use other providers, other systems, other models. So everything I'm sharing to you, this isn't, hey, call us at the end because only we can do this. Really not at all. And I will touch on that as we go and how you can think about it and how you can affect some of these changes. And honestly, right away, pretty quickly. So in all of this demographic cliff talk, scary talk, it's interesting to me that we are saying this word demographic over and over and over again, the demographic cliff. We've been saying it millions of times over the past 7, 8, 10 years, right? Demographic cliff. And I think that the solution or a solution to this conundrum of, a declining population is one, it's demographics. We're saying the word. And I don't think we're paying enough attention to it in practice. And Jason has been a master at demographic clustering, and was the one who brought this to the forefront for me many years ago. And then we added a psychographic layer, and we had something that is pretty differentiated and pretty special. So demographics, we're going to start talking about that, and then we'll layer in the title of the webinar is Psychographics is King, and we'll explain that convergence and how they work together. But to start here, it's a sort of marketing 101, know your audience idea. I have been in branding, communications, advertising strategy broadly in my whole career. I studied it in college, Pepperdine, the Stratcom and advertising major. I've loved it my entire life. I feel like I was born to do this kind of work. It has been in my blood, and I'll always do it. And I have run agencies and have all kinds of other stories and history and in communications prior to all this. And sort of the golden rule, the sacred writ of all marketers is this on the screen: know your audience. Nobody on this webinar, I don't care what seat you sit in, whether you're on the cabinet, board of trustees, enrollment, marketing, IT, anywhere in between on a campus, would agree with this, I think. We want to know our audience. It's critical. You have to know your brand story and then who you're telling that story to. And as much fine-grained detail with as much accuracy as possible. Know your audience. We say this, we learn this in college. This is 101 stuff. Everyone goes, yeah, of course, you roll your eyes, know your audience. And as a marketer, as an advertiser, I have wanted to get really good at answering that question for clients. I've been in consulting my whole career. And my clients want to know their audience. And I want to show you over the next 2 slides, I'm going to make fun of myself. I went back in the archives and I found an actual audience persona, as I called it, deliverable for a client that I won't name. And it was circa 2012. And I went and found it, and I screenshotted the next 2 pages just as they were and dropped them in as 2 slides. No editing to make it funny or to make it worse. It's exactly as I delivered this real work that was really paid for by a real client at an agency I was running, I'll say in Washington State at the time. Know your audience. I had a client that wanted to know their audience, and I said, hey, we do persona work as one does, right? You've seen multimedia firms, ad agencies try to build persona tools, and it's a valiant thing because we want to know our audience. Next 2 pages, let's dive into it. I promise unedited. You can see January 2012, I guess it was. Real work. This is primary audience for my client. If you're laughing or grinning, you should be, because it's embarrassing now. But this is, I'm telling my client, this is your primary audience. It's talent manager. I guess we pulled a Shutterstock image for Talent Manager. And then this is the brilliant content that we provided to our client. And I promise you, there are no additional pages. You might think you're showing us like the cover page and then it got better. It didn't. This is it. Things like savvy on the web, probably have a Facebook, pantsuit and red wine, right? Just like valueless stuff. And the way that I got at this, I remember with the team, was we just sat with our client and said, tell us about your customers. Because what else can some industries do? There isn't always access to the right kinds of data we can aggregate and model. So we do our best. It gets even worse, and then I'll stop. This is Plant Manager. I promise unedited. That's the real photo that we thought was the right one. For Plant Manager, a tertiary audience, blue collar, motorcycles and Bud Light. They're not on the internet. BlackBerry and email is the extent BlackBerry. This is back, Jason, when BlackBerry was still in the game. So know your audience. Real work, really shallow work, pretty terrible. And I can promise you at the agency, we never really materially used this at the time. Like truly, and I said this in Disney World, we check the box, know your audience. Here's a persona deliverable. You've seen variations like this. And did we put it into practice? How do you put that into practice? I mean, really, how do you activate, actionalize on that? It's really difficult. And the question I would ask you, really everybody in this webinar and myself as well, I guess, is, are we any better at this today in higher education? Are we any better? Are we much better? How much better are we at knowing our audience segments, student segments today? And I think we can stand to get a lot better. And I think it's imperative in the wake of a demographic cliff, if you will, enrollment cliff, that we get really good at this. And Jason and I want to kind of show you how very practically that we can be. I'm going to kick it over to Jason because, as I said, and he hates that I put this photo up, but I love putting it up. He gets embarrassed. Jason is a huge reason why any of this is innovated in the way that it was. And it was a chance encounter in a snowstorm in Bend, Oregon, that really the aha moment, the light bulb went off for the both of us. So I'll let Jason tell that story, and I'll be back after. Jason.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
That picture is not going to help anything related to the subject matter. So let's go ahead and flip the.
Want me to advance? Okay.
Yeah, let's flip the.
Right. Okay.
I think we just lost one attendee. There's a real neat story here, and it would take up too much time to go deep into it. But we were on a mission, and that mission led us to Bend, Oregon. I think it was 2016, maybe it was 2017, right over the turn of the year there. And bunch of Southerners going out to Bend, Oregon. And most of us forgot, there were 5 of us, most of us forgot really heavy coats, and it really wasn't forecasted to be the type of winter it was. So it ended up being a record for them. I think the next page, the next slide gives you some description of that. And it was, we had a great time. We were going out there for a creative blitz. At the time, we were partnering with Dartlet, and we were really doing things differently. And we were kind of in a phase of innovating a lot of our recruitment marketing strategies and bringing some sophistication to those efforts. And we ended up spending 3.5 days snowed in Bend, Oregon, and we were all at the same place. And if we had not been, we wouldn't have been able to travel. But we had a lot of time together over the course of those 3.5 days. Like I said, most of what we were going for was creative. It was a blitz, and if you haven't done a Carnegie blitz, those are super unique and incredibly helpful. But we didn't really know what we were getting into. In the back of my mind, as we traveled there, we had our first day of discussion, was one pressing question. And Tyler, next slide. And I began to really push this in about our second day there. We've become pretty good at knowing how to find students that would fit our, our demographics, and even students that maybe there were demographics we would like to move into. But we had a really unique challenge related to differentiating our message and presenting it in a way that students would actually not just read it, but resonate with it. And, kind of the concept of the email I would open is not the same email Tyler would open, right? So the way Tyler would dress for a webinar is not the same way I would dress for a webinar. Those differences are created by motives. They're created by certain types of values and belief structures that we just did not know a whole lot about. And when you looked at our pool, there was a lot of variation as it related to those motivating or motivational factors. So I hit Tyler up with this question one day, and I don't tend to soften things, and I think my real statement to him is, you're telling me a lot of things I know, but here's the real question, right? I know how to find Samford students, but I don't know what message to send them that differentiates us. Everybody says the same thing. They're saying it the same way. They're using the same modality. It is like white noise in the market. And there's questions about authenticity, and there were questions about how those elements all fit in presenting who you are as an institution. And I had no concern with all that. We're not trying. There's no bait and switch. We weren't trying to pretty up something that wasn't pretty or anything of that nature. We're just trying to simply get people to read an authentic message, to have an experience based on an authentic message. But what would motivate them to do that is different. And that conversation started the long process of figuring out, how do we take what we know about demographics and pair that with psychographics and create something that that allows for efficiencies that I had not experienced to that point in higher education, and allows for different differentiators to actually do that, right? We all bought a lot of products, we acquired a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, went to conferences, we even presented, but then we went back to our respective institutions and found that, applying those things were much different than talking about them or signing a contract. So we really, at our time together, really put all that into perspective. And I kind of gave Tyler and a couple others with Carnegie at the time, just the challenge. Help us figure out how to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah, as I remember it, it was like night 2, I think, and we were snowed in, like a foot of snow on the roof, and we had just gone through an exercise, and Jason was sitting back in like this little round table in the back corner. He was kind of lurking back there, and I was intimidated because Jason's like smile is the same as his grimace to me, so like, I'm always off guard a little bit. And he had his laptop, and I remember he motioned me over there, but it was a break in between, and I'll never forget, I sat next to him. We'd only known each other for maybe a year, right? So like newish relationship. He's the client, right? This is my client. And he spun his laptop around, never forget the moment, and he showed me Nielsen Prism clusters. So at that time, Jason was modeling his demographic clusters, demographic populations that convert to Samford best with Nielsen Prism. And I had not been exposed to that. So Jason was always modeling with his demographics, and he would tell me, this is when he said, I know demographically how to find, the blue blood estates, or I forget the names. That was actually a name, wasn't it, Jason? Yeah, it just came to me. There were these different clusters. And the light bulb for me, my yellow archetype was, he said, what if I need to say something different to each cluster? Could your psychographic system that we use for brand development, crafting the story for the university, and we had done that for Samford. We were through that work. So we knew Samford's unique identity. We had its archetypal position. We knew its storytelling, how to focus it. And Jason's aha was, what if that differed between demographic population? Turns out it does. And turns out it works and it's impactful. And we've been doing it ever since. And so with that, I'll just be brief here. I want to talk about fundamentals for higher education. My dad was always my coach growing up playing sports, and he loved basketball, and he was a disciplinary, a hard-nosed father, CFO type, and we didn't go play like one-on-one, sloppy pickup ball in the driveway. We would do drills, and he would talk about fundamentals, and he would say, square up to the basket, keep your elbow in, Tyler, use your legs, follow through, flick your wrist, that kind of stuff that I never forgot, but it was always doing drills, right? It wasn't just playing around in the driveway. And he said at one point something like, and he was my coach. He'd say, Tyler, in the fourth quarter, everybody's going to be really tired. Everybody's going to be emotional, right? There's going to be a certain score. Someone's winning, someone's losing, and players will start playing sloppy. They'll start breaking down. And it's the team that remembers its fundamentals and maintains fundamentals in the fourth quarter when it matters, it's going to win. I thought about that, and I thought, all right, if we're in the proverbial fourth quarter in higher education, call it, it may be slightly dramatic, but a demographic cliff, what are those fundamentals that you and I should be thinking about every single day, irrespective of the role that you're in? I think they apply to all of us. And it's these three that I would give to you that you could print out and put on a little card by your desk. I think no matter what you're doing, these are 3 end goals, 3 initiatives, 3 missions we should always keep. And that is clarify the brand story. We're not going to talk about that today. I could do hours on that. That's my, I'm a brand strategist at heart. I love that conversation. It's where my work began. We're going to talk about locate the best prospects. How do you actually know who to spend time and energy and money communicating to? How do you do that? How do you locate the best ones so we don't have sort of, waste in our spending, in our time, in our energy? And then 3, how do you deliver the right messages? Can we deliver tailored messages that are differentiated between those prospects? So this presentation will be 2 and 3 today. We'll have to cover 1, clarify the brand story, and another presentation. But starting here, locating the best prospects. How can we do that? And this is where demographics comes in heavily. And I want to play a little game here, do a little quiz. I wish I could see you, because I would throw candy to you if you got the quiz right, but I can't do that. We'll figure out some other reward. But here's interesting. I was talking to Dr. Brickman, who runs our research team, brilliant guy here at Carnegie, and is a foremost expert on how our psychometrics correlate to human behavior and create resonance empirically. And as we were talking about demographics, this idea that if you gave me just 3 demographics, and I had a whole room, this webinar, and you said, Tyler, you pick 3 demographics and show me that you could create value, meaning you could segment the populations within that group in a valuable way. Could you do that with just 3? And the answer is I could. I was talking to Brickman about this, Dr. Brickman, and it is the 3 demographics that you don't broach at dinner parties or over the holidays. It's 3 things you don't talk about, and it's these 3. The demographics of politics, income, and religion. So demographics being macro stats, right? Stuff that you can buy, car that the household drives, where that household eats, spending habits, income, religion, income politics, college degree attainment, things that you can get readily. Demographics are pretty easy to buy. You have access to them as you buy lists, right? From data providers, standardized test providers, SAT, ACT, and others. That's demographics, demography, easy stuff. Fairly cheap, fairly easy. We don't do enough with them in higher education. Some do, many don't. But if you gave me 3 demographics and it's these 3, I could do this. And we won't do this exercise. I promise we can't on the webinar. But if I said, I want all my politically conservative, upper middle class Baptists, if that fits you in the room, I want you to move over and cluster over here. And I said, I want my politically liberal, still upper middle class, let's say that stayed the same, agnostics from a faith perspective. I want you to cluster to my right. And if we did that exercise, that's 3 demographics. And I can promise you that if I studied those clusters just on 3, there would be amazing commonality in belief, in perspective, in what they're attracted to, in what they think about, and what motivates them. Now, there would be divergence as well, but there would be great convergence in that conversation. Example of prospects by undergraduate and graduate type, yes. Yeah, this works as well with graduate, and we can get into that. It applies, yes, Kate, to undergrad and graduate. And I can give you an example of that and where we've applied that. But so to that example, let's go into this trivia. I'm going to give you, and I'll try to do this rapid fire. Here's the game. Pretend we have this student, right? Metaphorical student, could be anybody, just a metaphorical student in your mind. And we are going to show that student 3 pieces of collateral, okay? And this is, advertising collateral, persuasive collateral to that student. We want to resonate with this particular student. And those 3 pieces of collateral, A, B, and C, they are styled, they are narrated, the imagery is such, the language is such that they are different, right? The agency, you, whoever it was that produced this, produced 3 very different pieces of content to try to resonate with this particular metaphorical student, okay? My question to you as I go through this is, how predictive are the following factors in determining the preference of that person? So 3 pieces of collateral. I actually have one. I wasn't sure I was going to do this. This is Clemson. This came in the mail. I've got a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. So I'm right in the thick of it right now with Eden, who Jason knows because Samford's on her list. Clemson's on her list too, Jason. I didn't want to bring this up here, but I'm doing it. We got this piece of collateral. It's a lookbook. It's got some interesting content. Clemson, if you're on the call, it's actually pretty well done. But it's been sitting, people say, does print matter? It's been sitting at our kitchen counter for a few days, and we've talked about it as a family with my wife and with Eden. So yeah, this stuff, it works, right? We're digesting it. We're looking at it. I've had tables of material with Eden. So let's just use that example. We've got this person, and they're looking at 3 pieces of collateral you sent. How predictive are the following factors in giving me an edge to know what that student will prefer? Preference, A, B, or C. I resonate with this one, that one, or that one, okay? That's the game. So my question to you, and you can use the chat for your guesses, and I'll figure out a prize system if you get it right. This is 1 to 100 of 100%, okay? 100% would mean I know exactly what you're gonna pick. 100 means it's gonna be C, and I knew that, right? Is gender predictive? What if I knew this metaphorical person's gender? Would it give me an edge? In the chat, if you think it would give a numerical edge, what number? Would it be 1%, 0%, 20%, 40% if I know gender? They're rolling in 20, 86, 30. I know the person's gender. This is just a demographic, right? Just a demo. Okay, they're coming in. The answer is actually 8. So I'm not sure if we see a 12. Jason, you'll have to monitor that. It's 8. So what that says is this metaphorical person in this test with this collateral, if I know that person's gender, I have an 8% edge. Now that's significant. An 8% bump in a casino, for example, is a big deal, right? 8% just from knowing that one demographic factor. What about this? What if I know that individual's race? Is there an edge? Is there a statistical edge? Yeah, thank you. Go ahead and guess in the chat. Prizes for plus or minus 1. I'll let it run for a second. Oh, 4. So we had it. Who was that? Someone got it dead on. I thought I lost. It's 4. So the demographic factor of race gives a 4% edge. How about income? All right, we know the household income of this individual. Go ahead. Is there an edge? Give it a second. It's 6%. If I know that individual's income, I can predict their preference between these materials by about 6% if I know their income. Religion, you get the game now. I know that person's religion. Does it give me a statistical edge in predictability? The numbers come in. We'll have to figure prizes out. Maybe it's Starbucks e-gift cards. Maybe we'll do that. 4%. If I know your faith perspective, 4% edge. This one's got to be important. This is higher education. You're all in higher ed. This has to matter. Student type, undergraduate, graduate, online, international. I know the student type. I know the type of student that I'm talking to. This matters to us, I think, right? It seems to me like we care a lot about student type and the work that we do. Yeah, thank you for Keep them coming. Less than 1%. Answer is actually it's approaching 0 in our work. Yeah, Melissa, question mark, exclamation. Yep, approaching 0. Student type. In terms of predicting preference between material, storytelling that's going to resonate, approaching 0. All right, regional geography. I know that the students from the South, from the West Coast, from the Northeast, from Canada, from you, whatever the example is. What is the edge? What is the edge in this demographic? Surely this must matter. Less than 1%, approaching 0, knowing the regional geography. Anne-Marie, why is student type such a low percentage? Because when it comes to understanding preference and choice, right, at a human level, where you live is going to be less relevant, right? If we have similar demography, a cluster in the South and the Northeast of a similar nature, right, they're going to like similar things, right? So geography isn't as material as, say, knowing one's faith. It just happens to be where they live. So that factor versus, say, faith, or versus, say, gender, is just less predictive. Where they live just matters less. For student type, for example, right? So student type, right, just is not as useful as say faith is in our study, in our work, right? How about this? How about personality? Now, this is not a demographic, and we're going to do a little foreshadow here. This is actually a psychographic. Okay. This means I know core facets of the person's personality. Now, this could be, you say, what does that mean? This could be the Enneagram. This could be MBTI, this Myers-Briggs. This could be DISC. This could be our archetype system. This could be any valid psychographic model that tests personality. What if it wasn't demographic? What if it was psychographic? What if it was personality? Is it predictive of choice? It's actually 15%. 15%. Donna Brown nailed it, spot on. That is very significant. 15% edge if I know the personality, core facets of the personality of the individual, right? To put this in another way, this aggregates. And if you want to go deep into this, we can get you a conversation with Dr. Brickman or anybody in our team if you want to go really deep down the trail. But you can aggregate it. So if I know this person's gender, race, geography, and student type, let's say I knew all 4 things, that's a 13% edge. You can effectively aggregate it. Knowing just their personality, just core facets of the personality, actually beats all 4 factors just by itself. Another way to think about it is this. We can aggregate all of it. Now we have personality, a psychographic, right? Psychographics are harder to get to. We'll talk more about it in a moment here, but psychographics are personality, desire, motivation, what intrinsically motivates a person, right? Stuff you can't just buy from a demographic provider, right? It's harder to get to. You have to talk to folks. You have to do mixed method research, surveys, workshop. But if you knew personality of a population and the 6 following demographic factors there, you're at 38% in our work, right? Just, yeah, I know, Kate, same. We're approaching 50% in knowing which piece of material will resonate with my daughter or not, right? And she's being exposed to multiple pieces of content. So if you knew facets about Eden Borders, it would matter in terms of how you should message to her, for example. To make this really practical, this is real work that we did at Carnegie for a client, and to be unnamed. And these are just 2, DC1 is demographic cluster 1. So this is modeling work that we do. We take demography, so take 3 cycles of enrollment data, for example, 3, 4, 2, whatever it might be, whatever you have access to, and model it and look at commonalities between who matriculated, who historically attends your school. You can look at it against the whole US population and current students that have matriculated and are currently attending. So DC1 for this client and DC2. Just these 2 demographic clusters taken together, the 2 most prevalent at this client's campus. and they represent 55.3% of the current student body, just in 2 clusters. So those 2 clusters are obviously very important. We need to know what makes them tick. We need to know how to find more of them. And fortunately, because demography is pretty easy to model and pretty easy to buy lists for, we can do that. It doesn't answer the question, what do you say to them? But it does help you locate them, which was the point of fundamental number 2. All right. So using demographics to locate the best prospects, right? Hopefully it showed you how important some demographics are. They're predictive. Knowing things about people helps you predict their preference and their choice. Psychographics, as I said, this is stuff like personality, motivation, belief, desires. You can't just buy this stuff. You have to do some work to get at this. They're more valuable, I would say, because of that. They're harder to access. This, as I'll disclaim it again, this is just Carnegie's psychographic model. You could use anything in your work. You could apply the Enneagram if you like. You could apply DISC if you like. As long as it's, I would urge that it's credible and valid and has some national testing and backing. Not that you just made it up, but you could pick any model. For the purposes of this presentation, we at Carnegie, we use as our foundation nine archetypes. 9 colors, an archetype is like a personality type, obviously, as I said earlier. And each color tells a story differently, right? And so purple, supportive and selfless. That's a very different way to communicate a story or receive a story than, say, green. Green archetype would be adventurous, inquisitive, right on the go, NASA, exploring. Red would be the entertainer. This is enthusiastic, funny, charming, optimistic, and there's a spectrum within each archetype. So this is our psychographic model that we can overlay on a campus, understand both your brand as a university and the student segments that already exist on your campus, right? As I told you, Jason was Nielsen prisming, clustering demographically for over a decade. So he could do that. He knew demographically what his clusters were. What to say to them and how to say it takes psychographics. Right? So to zoom out a little bit and kind of show you just really simply how this would work, if we knew a university's personality on a psychographic basis, right? And we knew that the key themes for the university were yellow, that's innovation, maroon is like gritty, tough, tenacious, hardworking. Nike uses maroon constantly. Sweating, tough, gritty, grayscale, that's maroon. Blue would be like achievement, strength, confidence, power, assertiveness. If we knew that was authentic to the university, that we should be telling stories in that way, and we knew we had a student type, a demographic, we want to send maroon to maroon, okay? We're going to send maroon to resonate. This is one of my favorite slides because this is an actual deliverable for a client. This is a real Dart 3. This is not made up. It's sanitized, obviously. You won't know who this is for, but it's an active Dart. So a Dart is the synthesis of demographics and psychographics together. It's both. We arrive at what we call a Dart profile. What we know about this Dart 3, they're the competitive challengers. This is objective. This is not subjective. This is not guesswork. This is not just fluffy for fun. This is objectively tested mixed method research to get at this on an actual campus customized for the school. And we know Dart 3, their personality, they identify at a full 100 with maroon. They are a purely maroon through our testing. They love gritty, tough, tenacious, hardworking, that idea. We know in copywriting and language, that they're an 83-point maroon, still a leading idea for them. They like copy, language that is gritty, tough, tenacious, resilient, persevering. And image preference. What actual image do you put for your digital ad? What image do you use in your Slate email campaign? What about your view book? They actually are a 99-point silver. So silver for this Dart is rebellious, break the rules, that kind of a thing. But they are just behind that 96 points, still almost one out, was maroon, right? And maroon and silver actually are kind of cousins in our world. Gritty, tough, hardworking, rebellious. So obviously, There's Dart 3, the competitive challengers. We know that is as maroon as a student group is going to get. So this university is going to send maroon messaging, still authentic, still all the evidence, visit day, statistics about the school that matter to you, campus size, all the evidence stays. But how you flavor it needs to change based on, one, it's got to be authentic. So it's still coming from an authentic position. But we are going to send maroon messaging, both digital, print, and otherwise, to DC cluster 2 and DC cluster 9 for this particular client. We know how to find them just from a street address, right? If we do that, we have a 2.6 times better match likelihood, meaning we send maroon to those demographic clusters. All we need is a street address, and we know how to put them into a cluster. And then this product could be tailored to that cluster. Almost 3 times better match, meaning that preference choice game we played, 3 times almost better. And it gets, we've seen up past 4 times better matches. So that's how that works in principle. I want to kick it over to Jason to talk about in practice, how you, Jason, and your work, I know you've been using this for a long time, how do you actually implement psychographics in the day-to-day?
Thanks, Tyler. Well, initially, we had to really think about it differently. So much of what we've historically done from a recruitment and admissions perspective, just in the industry, is transactional. I think it's only been the last several years that there's been a great interest in changing the way we look at it. And, you know, and to my marketing friends out there, I don't mean anything by this, but likes and impressions are great. That's all they are great. And when this work, you have to be able to resonate with an audience in a way that they stay engaged and they continue their pursuit of whatever it is they're looking for, right? And so we began to think about, what if we didn't make all of our communications revolve around this idea of CTA. We got to have them do something, right? Open something, click something, respond to something, right? What if we moved away from transactional, which the question about student type was one we wrestled with, and why it's less predictive is it's very transactional, right? So if Tyler's daughter had gotten a book that said, why you want to be a freshman at Clemson, that would probably have been less effective than the notes that they hit when they created that piece. So we began to really gravitate towards the idea of transformational. How do we tell a story in a way that a prospective student, prospective family reads it and becomes intrigued, engages with that story, relates to that story, as opposed to, and you can go to the next slide, Tyler, what you might see from just a demographic spread of communication, right? So if you take your hands and put them over the screen to just that middle piece, that best fit, and see, even if you did the good fit, and see all of the other pieces that are being printed, emails that are being created, digital that's being paid for, that are hitting audiences that are or really not even a good fit for your institution, then you begin to think about this idea of transformational. How do we hit the students that our message is going to resonate with them? They're going to want to be a part of something, not just want to actually do something like a CTA would be concerned. So it was a shift in our thinking. And back in 2017, you know, when we told people that we appreciate all the work they'd done for us, and we were glad we'd gotten this many hits, but not one of those could we trace back to actually helping us create an application or helping us further our brand and storytelling with that individual. We wanted to go a different direction. That wasn't well received back then. And so we had to be really confident in our story and really confident that we knew how to tell our story to an audience in a much more of a dense way. So Tyler, if you go, this is that dense way, right? This is when you really understand your storylines, you understand the students that will resonate with different storylines, and all that is based on what Tyler's already talked about. There's an efficiency here that creates an opportunity for you to do a lot of the things you're already doing in ways that, or at least it was for us, in ways that we didn't even need additional aid. Like we didn't have to go out and say, or give additional aid, or we didn't need additional budget. We didn't have to go to the budget office, say we need more money to do all these wonderful grand things that may or may not work. You were able, through being more strategic in your approach, we're able to do things different with how we created our lists as far as name acquisitions and where we placed media, how we use zip codes. We actually were able to, prior to this coming on board, we actually went out to different places like ESRI and other types of clearinghouses that do all these surveys and collect all that data. We would pull that data down by 20,000 zip codes. We would take those zip codes, run them by our zip codes, look for a 95% match rate on certain psychographic type questions. There was a lot of inefficiency in that, and there was a lot of cost behind that. Being able to take something that seems complex and narrow it to a point that you could have a, pretty much a direct hit on your best fit and good fit targets was key to us. And that's how we did it. But I would stress it takes a shift in the way you think, the old way of doing your marketing.
Jason, can I ask you, and we didn't rehearse this, and I hate to put you on the spot, so just tell me to be quiet, but like, we look at story A, B, and C, so we're segmenting now, obviously, right? Like, so you found best fit and good fit, your demography, you've done the clustering. At Samford, are you able to talk at all about the 3 different stories you kind of tell to students? I don't have to I'm not asking you to give away our sauce, but when you think about story A versus story B versus story C, like any insights you can give the.
Yeah, so I guess the simplest, I know we're running out of time here. Think about story A would be our pink. Story B would be our purple. Story C could be some of our blue. So you take story C, who would blue resonate with, right? You take story B, who would pink resonate with, right? Who are the dreamers out there, the inspire, those that can inspire, who are looking for that type of elegant and refined feel in their educational opportunities. That could be a whole story B. Now you may take story B and put that into different markets in different ways, but that story B would be consistent across the board. And again, story A could be another one of your personas. It's your ability to talk about who you are in a way that resonates with that particular target.
Yeah, I'll answer a couple of questions that come in, Jason. One is, does having a campaign, if you blend psychographics and demographics like this, does it ever hurt responses? That's a great, she said, my agency tends to focus on singular messaging. And I think, I'll answer your question. That's this, singular messaging. One, it's easier. It takes less work. So we buy a big list, right? Almost irrespective of, we try to find best and good fit. And then we're going to say one story to everybody. Hopefully we've illustrated that people are different and different demographics and psychographics affect how they're going to receive that. So if we can get smarter about how to disseminate that and behave like this, we improve our odds. So to answer your question, we measure this continually with our digital campaigns and our slate campaigns. Right? Like open rates, for example, we're going to show you we have 3 case studies that we're going to talk through quickly. I think Jason's going to cover them. I'll answer your question really specifically. If done well, if done right, if executed correctly, psychographic communication to the right demographics works, and it can work by a big margin. And we'll show you examples. To your question, can there be times that you blend them and it didn't work? That can happen in a moment. And what we'll do is we'll tailor it. We'll say, hey, that subject line needs work. That's not blue enough. Hey, the way that you handle that opening copy, team, let's rework that. This one isn't hitting. I'm not sure that image is yellow enough. So I guess my answer is yes, within the breadth of a campaign, we have to tailor and react. But on the whole, the results can be astounding. And then how do you recommend starting to move in this direction with a small team? That's a great question. I would say with a small team, if the best you can do is focus your story and be consistent. I hear Dr. Brickman in my ear. If nothing else, be consistent with your messaging over time. If you have to start really, really small, if you can begin to segment, even better. Be precise with this story, focus it, be precise with 2 stories. Consistency matters over time. Just repetition will matter. And many brands struggle just with that, right? To focus a story, to be emotive, and to express a personality, just that alone will help. Just that alone. Depending on the size of the team, if you have modelers on staff, if you have analytics folks on staff that have some capability to model data, even better, right? And I would say, even if you don't have a psychographic basis right now, start with demographics and begin to model your demographics right away. That doesn't take a whole lot of work with the right asset. Even you have to subcontract that, right? To begin to look at your past data and see who's matriculating and why. Jason, I know we have a few examples. This first one's yours. We can tick through quickly. Answers the question of, I guess, does it work? Kick over to you.
Yeah, I would say, of course it works. Tyler's smart enough not to ask me to do this if it hadn't worked, of course. But what has worked is, and this is a longer conversation, but it's a combination of many things. The element of darts has been a huge factor in the way we, acquire our lists, in the way we set up our campaigns, in the way we set up different type of strategies that are headed in, that used to be headed in multiple different directions, right? So it didn't replace what we do. It didn't replace our recruiters. It didn't replace our need for campus visits. It was an added tool, and it helped us tremendously as we went on this run. This was, I think, over a 5 or 6 year period. And these are several others, real live living and breathing institutions who have been able to kind of put volume aside and say, okay, we're going to really narrow that focus, understand who we are, how to tell the message, and where the students are that this message would resonate. Again, seeing terrific results. And this is a private R1, much smaller institution than the previous one, and you still see good results.
Yeah. We see increased inquiry conversion on darted names when done well. Darted comms increases yield almost every time. Now, to that question, we have to tailor, right? You have to be reactive and responsive as you go. But the social science, the research is sound. Figure out who you should be targeting and say the right thing. Now, is it a guarantee? It is not. If you're a researcher in the crowd, we're not saying there's a 1-to-1 guarantee that when I put Jason into Dart 1, Dart being, again, demographics and psychographics combined, as I mentioned, that maroon to those 2 clusters. Let's say that we put Jason in Dart 1 because of his home address, which gave us a demographic cluster, which placed him in Dart 1. So Jason's going to get blue communication. I'm making this up. Am I guaranteeing that Jason is a blue as a Dart 1? I am not guaranteeing that. We can't do that. But the odds are much improved. That's the match likelihood. What we're doing here is increasing odds, but that odds increase can be upwards of 300 to 400%, right, in the work that we do. So, right, I like this question here. How do we get archetypes without Carnegie? How can we get motivations? Look, it does not have to be archetypes. This is a model that works, that's well studied. How do you get it? Look, in one survey, if you're doing work on campus and you build one survey, and we send all student body surveys when we do this work, it's a piece of the process. We do workshops, and we're talking to folks in workshops, getting qualitative contextual data, or then validating that with a quantitative survey. One question in a survey can help you get at psychographics, right? Does not have to be the 9 archetypes. That's ours. As I said, it could be Enneagram. It could be something you make up. But I would say do that. Making it up is better than not asking. If you send a survey out and, Susie tells you something about herself, her personality, what motivates her, it can really be as simple as, hey, what motivates you? from this list. Rank order these ideas. Which of these ideas are most important to you? That alone, if you tag that to that student record and that makes its way into Slate, is suddenly valuable. And then I saw a question about how do we segment in Slate? So we do that with darts. So when we build dart populations for our clients, we segment by dart in Slate. So as we're communicating for our clients and we're doing search work and search campaign work, for example, we are darting those campaigns. So we have a darted email campaign in Slate for Dart 1 that's different from Dart 2, different from Dart 3. That's how we're segmenting practically within Slate. So it's one of the first things that we do. We made it just on time, Jason. The 3 fundamentals. There's a fabled demographic cliff. The answer, I think, is that we need a psychographic lift. I would say pay attention to 2 things. Your demographics, make them matter because they should matter and they're useful. If you can fuse that with psychographics, you have a really impactful, really important tool in a time when the student population is declining. If you have other questions, I'm not sure we got to everything. My email will be at the end, as will Jason's, and we'll make sure we respond to you. I think, Lizzie, I'm going back over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Just kidding, I'm muted. Thank you guys again for your time. We do have a few resources that you'll see here that my colleague Emily Denny will be sharing in the chat. Take a quick at those. And then just a friendly reminder to please don't forget to fill out our post-webinar survey. It'll take you less than 3 minutes, and it's incredibly helpful to our team as we're looking to improve the content and the delivery of our webinars. You'll get a pop-up from Zoom right after we end the meeting. So thank you again for joining us. If you do have any follow-up questions, please reach out to Jason and Tyler. Their emails are here. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Carnegie webinar. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
See you, Ryan.